Hi, this is your coach Joe Lucas, and welcome to my latest Practice Power blog. Hey, what I thought we'd do today is share with you just some very kind of big picture concepts on dealing with both prospects and clients to get them to do things. And let's face it, we being in the people business, a lot of times what happens is, we can do a great job, we can come up with a great plan, great set of recommendations, ways to really help somebody improve their situation. And I don't know about you, to me, there's nothing more frustrating than having somebody in front of you, whether again they're a client or a prospect, and you just can't get them, you just can't get to the yes, and it's highly frustrating. So what I thought I'd do today is take about a 2-hour presentation. And by the way, this entire e-learning is available on practicepower.net. So what I'm going to do in the next 15 minutes or so is give you some working concepts so that when you go back out there, again in the field, if you will, you have some great tools to move things along. And the other reason why I'm bringing this to you guys today is, I have a brand new RIA team as clients, and all this potential great guys, some really cool markets they're looking to get into, and and just talking to them about their pipeline and their situations, you can just see that they have fallen into the trap, as so many people do in this industry, and just kind of what it is, that we kind of get into the logical, analytical influence slash sales process, and we forget that 95% of the population are emotional decision makers justified by logic. So let's get into some of the content here today. So what do you need in order to have somebody say yes to you? What do you need to do to get people to take action? Well, I mean, there's a couple different things, and we're not going to go over them all in depth and detail today in this quick blog, but I'm just going to give you some the four areas, right? Number one is how they make decisions. So what are the patterns that they run? Number two, their values. So, hey, what's most important to them in life, with investing, with the markets, with planning, whatever. And then what are the rules that they have? So in other words, what has to happen? How do you know this is happening? The third part, which is probably where a lot of you spend most of your time, quite frankly, is in their financial goals. So, what do you want? Things like that. The financial planning process obviously would fall in under this scenario. And then the fourth piece, their needs. So what is it they need? So needs could be something like I need a certain amount of income, I need a certain asset level, things like that. Wants would be, I really always wanted to go to Europe for a month. I always really wanted to take a cruise. I always really wanted to do this. So more the bucket list, the wants, right? And then the wounds are, hey, things I want to avoid, the pain, loss, too much risk, things like that. So you just want to be aware of those. So let's talk about these things in a little bit more depth and detail. So first off, clarity on how they make decisions. Every human being has a certain syntax, a certain process, a certain pattern they run in order to make decisions. And it's very important that we find out what their patterns are. It's incredibly important. Another one, like we just spoke about, their values and the rules that are associated to them. And again, we need to know what's important to them. What do they want? What do they want to avoid? How do they know? And then also what I'll say, re-benchmarking of their financial goals. Now, notice the word there, re-benchmarking. Now, why is it a re? Well, if you're dealing with a new person, prospect, they may or may not already have a financial plan. So if they don't have one, obviously we're just going to benchmark. But if they have something, hey, people change. And we want to make sure that we're going back on a regular basis and doing that, and especially with your clients. Look, I mean, I've been at this now for nearly a quarter century, and I can go back to the tech boom of 2000, to the crash of 2000 and 2007, to I think now we're almost full circle again. And I had clients last year did a great job with their clients' money, but they didn't beat the S&P, and a lot of them are catching flack for that. So what does that tell me? We go in these cycles of greed, fear, and then kind of small little periods where it's kind of in equilibrium, if you will. So it's very important that you always on a regular basis, especially if you have clients for a long time, which, familiarity sometimes will breed what I call contempt, and you take things for granted. You make assumptions, and you always want to go ahead and check in with your clients, make sure we're re-benchmarking what their goals are. The other piece is clarity on needs, wants, and wounds. And again, a need, if you think about it, most advisors do what? A needs analysis, cash flow needs analysis, retirement needs analysis. Our industry spends a lot of time talking about needs, and so needs tend to be, very tangible things. How much money do you need a month? Things like that. And where we need to really get into the wants. Now, I'll make this statement, and I just want you to hear it for a second. A want is 10 times more powerful than a need. So getting needs are great, but where the juice is to move somebody is aligning your process, your plan to their wants. We call that an emotional tie-in. And the last one are going to be the wounds. And we need to really understand, hey, what do they want to avoid? What's been their past? Have they gotten burned? Because look, let me say this to you very clearly. If you're dealing with somebody, and look, there are two types of people that come in our world, okay? People that have never worked with an advisor before, and people that have worked with an advisor before. Obviously, the people that have worked with an advisor, if they're coming to you, obviously that means they're dissatisfied, right? Because they were really thrilled with their current relationship. I don't know if you'd be talking to them. So I think we got to be very clear that, just like anything else, they're going to bring some baggage into your relationship with them, just like, in life, with relationships. There's always going to be some baggage. This will be no different than that. So you need to be very, very clear on what their wounds are. Key point here is this. You are in the people business, not the investment business. And I say that very specifically for this reason. I find that you can be a brilliant tactician, technical person, planner, CFA, SEMA. You can put any designation you want on your card. Totally cool with that. However, just because you're bright, smart, and do a very good job, if you don't understand people, you'll still make some money in this business. Here's the beauty of our business. You cannot have all your resources available to you, and you'll still make a pretty good living. But if you want to have high levels of success, kind of, reach that brass ring, if you will, ultimately it's going to boil down to understanding human beings. Because let's face it, markets do what markets do. Economies do what economies do. Governments do what governments do. People are frustrating. If you really think about where's all your cost and where's 80% of your stress? People. Client reviews, touch base calls, calls in, service issues, right? What are they all? They're all people centric. So the more you can adapt and understand people, human beings, so much more valuable. So as much as some of you got into this business because you love markets and you love financial planning and all that jazz and love creating portfolios and the science of it, right? And the art of it also, you got to master human beings. You got to. Especially as our industry undergoes a radical revolution over the next several years. Now, what do I mean by radical revolution? The absolute influx of technology in taking over a lot of the technical functions of an advisor relationship, robo-advisor, online financial planning, things like that where, if we're just providing service, like I'm going to run money and I'm going to do a financial plan for you, and that's kind of what we do, and we're not in the relationship people business, you're going to be commoditized very quickly, and you'll still do okay, but you're going to be under pricing pressure. Clients are going to want you to drop their fees. There's not going to be a lot of value add, and we're going to struggle, and that's just the truth. So we've got to look for other avenues to really understand the human dynamic. So very quickly, what I want to do is just go over some quick elements here of how human beings, how we all make decisions. So let me kind of give you a quick list here. So first off, every person has a unique decision-making process. So it's sort of like a DNA, their fingerprint, things like that. Everybody has their own way. And you've got to recognize the individuality of that. That's why I am not a fan of what I call a standard presentation, a standard meeting, a standard this, a standard that, because you're only going to catch a certain percent or part of that process slash syntax. Now, what most advisors do is they apply what I call their global syntax, which is their own, to any prospect or client situation. So what they'll do is say, well, here's how I would want it done. So I'm going to do it that way. And sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong, and it's just kind of interesting. I've made the statement plenty of times. I can go to a restaurant and I can order food, a steak, whatever, any way I like, right? Prepared any way I like. I go to a financial advisor, they're going to be their plan, the way it is, how many pages, they're going to put me through their process, how they like to do things, no matter what I am. And let me give you a quick example of that just so we can put it in proper context. So, one of the syntaxes that we have, and there's several of them, I think there's actually 13. We're not going to do all 13 here. They're actually on Practice Power. But one of the syntaxes is big picture versus detail people. We'll just use that. So a big picture person is not a person that's going to, thank God, right, for most of us, right? A big picture person is probably not going to read a financial plan. Is probably not going to read the proposal. Is probably not going to read all the statements and prospectuses and ADVs and everything else. They're a skimmer, as we like to call it. And now those are they're good because number one, they won't bog you down. Number two, big picture people tend to be pretty quick decision makers. So that's good for us. Now, if you're one of those people, that's great because you'll resonate with me because I am definitely a big picture person. If you're a detailed-oriented technician and you want to dazzle me with pie charts and a 75-page proposal / plan, and you're going to sit me in your office in your conference room, and you're going to painstakingly go over it with me, I'm going to sit there for about 5 minutes, kind of be interested, and then after that, I'm going to sit there and nod my head, yep, and you know what I'm thinking about? Man, what can I have for lunch today? I wonder who the Yankees are playing tonight. Anything but what you got going on. And I'm literally thinking about how to get out of that room as quickly as possible. Why? Because you're not matching my syntax, my process. So a very simple question when you're meeting with somebody for the first time in the initial meeting, and we talk about this in Meeting Mastery, is to just ask a simple question. How do you like your information? Do you want me to prepare it in terms of just the big picture? Do you want highly detailed, lengthy debrief? Or do you want the big picture and some supporting information? We call it blended, if you will. Big picture, detail, blend, right? 3 boxes. You got to know what you have with your clients. You got to know what you have with your prospects. Very simple, okay? So I'm giving you an example on that. A decision-making syntax is nothing more than a program, a way or pattern that we use to make decisions. So really what it is just it's a unconscious / conscious pattern / Q&A that all human beings have that they run. All of you have your own pattern. Think about it for a second. Think about the last major purchase you made, whether it was a car, a house, whatever it was, right? Something that was economically significant. And obviously hiring a financial advisor would be considered an economic significant decision. So when you've made your last economic significant decision, how did you decide? Did you just find, let's say cars, I think people can relate to cars. Did you just see a car on the road and say, you know what, I want that car. That's what I'm going to get. And you say, okay, it's a BMW, and I'm going to go down to the BMW dealer, and I'm just going to buy it. And you're mentally you're predisposed. I'm going to do this, right? And so unless something goes horribly wrong, you end up with a vehicle, right? That is a huge, big person, completion-oriented scenario, okay? Or you like this. I need a new car. And you see something you like on the road. That's interesting. So you go, you know what? Let me go on Consumer Reports. Let me go on Car and Driver. Let me go on AOL Auto, right? And you do all these reviews. So you check it all out, right? Then you sit there and go, I wonder what this sucker's going to cost to insure. So now you call your insurance agency, right? And you find out, hey, if I want to buy this car, what's it going to cost for the insurance, right? Then you sit there and go down to the dealer and you drive, you like it, and you negotiate prices. I wonder if I can get cheaper somewhere else. So now you start playing the game, and you'll spend a week going between 2 or 3 different dealers to save, maybe save a couple $100, things like that. And you do all this, and then you end up buying the car. Now I got 2 different people. They both bought the same BMW. What's the difference in the patterns? Radically different. If you don't know that, if you don't recognize those patterns, what's going to happen would be a couple different things. Number one is that if I'm a big picture person and I've got this detailed buyer, I'm going to give up on them too soon. I'm sitting there saying, you know what, this person's never going to make a decision. They're driving me crazy. They're nitpicking, da-da-da. I'm off doing my own thing, right? And you'll lose opportunities. Conversely, if you're a detail-oriented person and you're dealing with a big me, right? I'll just use me. I walk into a dealership. I know what I'm getting. I want it. I want it within an hour. I mean, I literally have bought cars and have taken delivery in 90 minutes. I make everybody crazy because that's just how I don't have time to sit around and wait. All right. So if you're going to sit there, and I'll give you a personal example. So I picked up my last BMW last year, and they're nice people and they do a good job. And so I get in the car and I'm the kind of guy. Let me just press all the buttons. I'll figure it out. That's what I do. So I'm sitting there and the guy pulls out the manual, and I'm literally sitting in the driver's seat, and he's sitting in the passenger seat, and he's going over this button does this, and here's how you do this. I give him 15 minutes. I'm shaking. I'm like, I want to get going. I want to drop the roof and drive this baby, right? And if I say, you know what? Literally, I looked at my watch and said, you know what? I gotta go meet my wife. I gotta go. Thanks a lot. If I got any questions, I'll call you. And I literally ushered him out the door, put the roof down, and rode off the dealership because I just couldn't handle it anymore. You have to understand that when you deal with other human beings, now I'm giving you obviously a pretty extreme example, but I am a pretty extreme example of this. You got to understand who you're dealing with. Otherwise, you're never going to get them as clients, and if you do, you're never going to have that great relationship because you're always going to feel like you're missing something. Okay, so very important. So I want you to understand how do you decide and understand that process to know thyself and then know other people. The other thing is most people will run the same syntax when they make comparable decisions. So what I always want to know is, I always want to uncover syntaxes because that tells me. So how can you uncover without asking a direct question? Hey, if let's say they drive up to your office and you have to see the car they have. And let's say it's a nice car for argument's sake. Hey, man, I really like that car. Hey, I'm curious, how did you decide to go get that Cadillac, that Ford, that BMW, that Audi, that whatever it is, right? Hey, how did you decide on that? And you listen to the story. If they say, well, my neighbor had one, man, I just loved it, and I just went down deal, I got it, right? And so what does that tell you? Well, the odds are that's a pretty much a big picture completion person, right? Or he says, I need a new car, and I heard they were good, and I did my research. When you hear the word research, go into detail mode immediately, right? So is it as simple as, well, Joe, you're saying is how they evaluate an automobile is how they evaluate an advisor? In a lot of cases, the answer is yes. They'll run that same syntax. Why? Because people are habitual creatures. They do the same things over and over again. They'll say creatures of habit, right? So in our world, what we need to do is to look at them from a couple different ways. So if I'm dealing with a prospect, I want to know, so first of all, if they have a relationship with a financial advisor, I want to know how they got that relationship. So I'm curious. Oh, I see you're over there. I see you have it comes up in conversation. Hey, I see you have a relationship over the XYZ firm with so-and-so or whoever. Hey, I'm curious. How did you end up over there? And I'm going to let them tell me their story of how they got there. And how did you? And I would say, and then the follow-up question would be, hey, I'm curious. How did you know that was the right person for you, the right scenario for you? And is it as simple as, hey, I like them. I said yes. I signed the paperwork, right? Or is it, well, I like them, and then what I did is I got a proposal from them, and my son-in-law, he went to Harvard, so I ran that baby by him. He had some questions, and then I went to my CPA because they know a lot about everything, and I talked to them, and they didn't give me an answer. They just listened and said, well, maybe yes, maybe no, nothing definitive, right? Which what most CPAs do. And then, I asked for some references and I got this and I talked to some people and I really liked them. Man, so right there, you have a pretty much a detailed, process-oriented person and you got to hang in there with them. So how they make decisions in the past is how they're going to make decisions in the future. And you need to know. So, how do you decide to go with a person? Hey, how do you evaluate a recommendation when an advisor or professional brings you a recommendation? How do you evaluate whether you think that's a good recommendation or not? And you listen to hypotheticals. That's why we always like hypotheticals. I'm curious, in your opinion, or hypothetically, you always want to ask questions that way of prospects because you're not making any commitments. You're not trying to push them into anything. You're just being curious. And I guess that's really the optimal word here is you've got to be curious. You've got to be curious about people, how they are, why they are, how they decide things, how they evaluate things. These are all crucial elements of being an excellent financial advisor. And, unfortunately, as an industry, and it's our industry's fault, quite frankly, you know way more about compliance and FINRA and product and all this other stuff. And look, very, very few of you, and I don't mean this to be derogatory, you've lost, millions of dollars of income in your career because you never really mastered the most important part of this business, which is the people business. And that's where you've got to spend some time and energy because that is the difference going forward in our business is not going to be technical proficiencies because technical proficiencies will be done by an algorithm, by some program, and that's just an unfortunate fact where you're going to go ahead and add tremendous value to your client relationships is when you really get under the hood and get to know them as human beings. Flaws, decision-making patterns, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of the above. So you need to be aware of that. Okay? And I just want to give you a primer. So this entire e-learning, which is about 2 hours long, is on practicepower.net. And if you want a deep dive into this stuff, there are two 27 module learnings on meeting mastery, which is how to run meetings with prospects, and MAP, mastering the art of people. So thank you for taking your time while I'm recording this on a beautiful Saturday here. So hope you are having a great weekend, and let's make sure we have a great week, and I'll see you in about 7 days.